So you want to offer a partnership arrangement. Let's roll up our sleeves and think that through.
Welcome to the Navigating Abundance podcast. Our goal is to encourage you to pursue your total family wealth potential through insightful conversation with experts and thought leaders in their fields. But first, some obligatory disclosures. Navigating Abundance podcasts do not represent investment, legal, or tax advice. Any opinion expressed in Navigating Abundance podcast is solely those of Christopher Tanke and his guests and are based upon information believed to be reliable but not guaranteed. Podcasts are produced for educational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered an endorsement of the guest or the views that they hold. Information shared may not be appropriate for your personal situation. Consult a qualified advisor for guidance. Investment advisory services are offered through Strategic Financial Group, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Navigating Abundance is a trademark of Strategic Financial Group, LLC. And now here's your host, Chris Tanke.
I'm very excited today to have with us as a guest Brent Enders of USA Financial Securities. Brent has been with the firm for over 30 years and actually had a partnership journey of different forms, which I think you'll find very interesting. So whether you're a business owner that's saying, I think I need to expand into partnership and offer that to folks, or you're already heavily involved with a partnership arrangement, I know you'll find a lot of great information in our conversation today. Thanks for being here with us. I've known Brent for many, many years and still am involved with USA Financial to some degree on a professional level, and got to appreciate his wisdom, his heart, his acumen for all things business. He's been through the gauntlet. He's come out the other side. He's a true warrior and a great guy. So Brent, thanks. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Chris. Glad to be here. Looking forward to it.
Atta boy. So I wondered if you could just introduce yourself a little bit. I know you real well, but if you could introduce yourself to the audience, and then we'll launch into our topic.
Sure. Yeah, happy to. So Brent Enders, president of USA Financial, which is a conglomeration of subsidiary firms. Chris, for those who don't know us or never heard of us, what we do is provide services and support to independent financial advisors all around the country. So we help them with operations and technology and marketing and anything we can do to help them as they're working with their retail investor clients. I've been here 30 years as of June of this year.
30.
Been
30 years. Wow.
When I started, no kids, no dog, no wife, no house. I had hair. It was a long time ago.
Well, you've weathered pretty well. You've weathered pretty well. As we talk about offering partnership arrangements and what kind of a big commitment that is, there's so many things to consider. And I just want to start by saying, boy, isn't this analogous to a marriage, right? You take your time, you pick the best one you can, because it's either going to be the best day of your life or the worst day of your life when you get married. And
very fair.
And I think the same is true with partnership arrangement. You have said, I've heard you say it before, it's really important, and we do this backwards. You should really hire slow and fire fast when you build a team. We all tend to hire fast and fire slow, and that's always pulling the Band-Aid off slowly. It's a bad idea. So not to frighten everybody, but of course, a lot of you are listening. You're business owners. You're curious to see the spin on this. Some of you, if you already have partnership arrangements, even though we're talking about offering one, I think most of this will be applicable to arrangements that are up and running already. But boy, what a monumental decision to start giving equity shares out, either through purchases or gifting or whatever the case might be. I mean, you're going behind the barn and you're pricking your fingers and you're mixing your blood for sure when you do that. And there's a lot of considerations. But the problem is, for many of us, we have to do it. I mean, if you have really great talent that has been working hard, essentially they've earned, in my opinion, equity, the golden handcuff concept or whatever. They should have a stake in the game. But wow, you got to make sure that you know who you're getting hitched to. That's for sure. So why don't you describe, if you would, Brent, you've had a real interesting journey to your partnership development there at USA Financial over 30 years. Could you kind of describe that for the audience?
Sure, happy to. So Chris, my first encouragement is, as we talk today, there are lots of options to do this. So that's the good news. I think you will help me uncover some of the various ways somebody can do this. But yeah, let me tell my story a little bit. So 30 years ago when I started here, I started as an employee, small company, 5 employees. I was number 5. My now business partner was basically building the company out of the trunk of his car, planes, trains, automobiles, traveling around. Inside the company, there were some problems going on that he wasn't aware of and eventually figured it out. And at one point, he got rid of everybody but me. So it's just the two of us. So lots of opportunities present themselves when you're the only person working for a company other than the owner.
You're a key employee at that point, right?
Yeah, very much. So that was an interesting thing that took place too. But fast forward a number of years past that, as the company was growing and developing, my now partner came to me and he gave me an opportunity to start earning what a lot of people in the tax or the CPA world would call phantom stock. We can talk about that for a second too. The name is not necessarily the best. There's some other names that are starting to become more common, like synthetic equity, but phantom stock is a way to give somebody some value in the creation they're helping build in the company without actually giving somebody true equity shares with voting rights and all the legal entanglements that come along with that. So I started out as a phantom stock owner and I was accumulating phantom shares. And if you want me to, at some point, I can explain how that works. And then a few years after that, my now partner and I decided to start some other entities. And on those entities, I was a true equity owner and investor from day one. I helped put money into the company, provided capital. So my partner and I launched a couple of other companies where I was a true equity owner. Yet I had phantom stock in one of our other companies. And for a bunch of good reasons, we decided we needed to create a holding company kind of over the top of all of our entities. And at that point, having me have ownership in some companies directly, but phantom stock in another, it was becoming too messy and complicated. So we both agreed that we'd convert my phantom stock in the one entity into actual equity. And then we rolled all those companies up underneath the holding company, and it kind of adjusted our ownership splits at that point. Because one of the companies I owned 30% of, one I owned 20% of, and one I had 10% phantom stock in. So it was a little messy to get through that conversion, and there are some tax things that we had to work out.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I would tell people listening to this, Chris, if possible, try to start with the end in mind if you're going to go down this path. Because Mike and I, my partner, had never really thought when we started the Phantom program what would transpire over time. And you can't always predict everything. Had we known that we were going to form these other companies and do a holding company, Phantom stock probably wasn't the best way for us to get started. But at the time, it was a good solution.
Yeah, well, I guess so much of partnership arrangements are evolutionary, right?
Yes.
And it's very serendipitous the way that a business is going to go. You can't always see the direction, the turns, the additions, the subtractions, and it's just it's kind of a constant thing to be managed for sure. But beginning with the end in mind, so to speak, it isn't always the easiest way to go. It kind of depends. Maybe if you're a manufacturing firm, you might be able to look at your trajectory a little bit better. But a securities firm and what you guys were able to build out with the different subsidiaries and stuff, boy, I mean, in some ways you were being pioneers even in the concept of what you were doing. So how do you plan for, stocks, stock options and partnerships and all that kind of stuff? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Well, you survived it. So how did you survive it? How do you have these kind of conversations then? If saying, well, gee whiz, let's go from phantom stock to, general partnership. How do you make that leap? Because there are tax considerations. There is an equity difference. Wow.
Right. Yeah, I was going
to say, you better know your partner pretty well.
Well, yes. So first of all, once the decision was made for me to be a true equity owner in the other entities we established, I mean, my now partner had to be comfortable doing that right out of the gate, because that is an entirely different relationship than the phantom stock that he had offered him and providing me prior to that. I mean, phantom stock, one of the reasons people like that option, Chris, is it provides the current owner and primary shareholder a lot more flexibility in terms of how the shares are issued. If that person ever departed or they had to part ways, there's a lot less long-term entanglements. You can claw those shares back. If you do a true equity partnership with somebody, if there's a breakup, you can't just claw those shares back. They are an owner, even if they're a minority owner. And the long-term entanglement of a true equity partnership is way different than phantom stock. My partner chose phantom stock, and we later rolled out phantom stock to our employees, but it provides a lot more flexibilities in how it's issued. If things don't work out, there's a lot more flexibilities for the primary owner to deal with that and not have the long-term legal connections of a true equity partner.
And so the way these phantom stock situations are arranged, if I'm a key employee and I've put 20 years into the company, and I can have an equity position or I can have a phantom stock position, what is the downside for me as an employee to have phantom stock, not to be a true partner, but to have a phantom stock position as far as motivation?
Right. No, good question. I would say our experience, well, one, I was a phantom stock owner at one point. And two, having seen our employees go through that with us, I would say that the two things that can be viewed as more of a perception issue. Well, one's a perception issue, one's a real issue. The perception challenge is they don't really have any voting say because they don't actually have true equity. So they don't get to help make final decisions and vote on anything. And a lot of people don't care about that as much.
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest perception problem is it real? I mean, the name itself, like I said, I don't care for the name phantom stock.
Yeah.
Attorneys and CPAs use it. It almost implies that it's not real. And so there's a bit of a concern from some people that, A, is it really real? And then the question is, well, at what point is value actually going to be generated and created?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're not a stockholder, they're not partaking in any net profit or getting any dividends paid to them along the way. They're truly just kind of riding it out, waiting until the day the company gets sold to get value. So there's a little bit of a concern of, is it real? And how am I going to get value out of this thing at some point? And for some people, I think they wonder, is it ever actually going to happen? It's that bittersweet moment of, I love the company. I love working here. I want to keep doing what I'm doing, but they also know to get value out of the phantom stock, the company someday has to be sold or they don't get the benefits. So those are a bit of the negatives. It's more of a perception thing that has to be managed if you're going to give out phantom stock. The one thing that is real is phantom stock, when it does pay out to employees, if you go down this path, it is considered taxable income. Phantom stock actually operates for the tax nerds out there. Phantom stock falls under 409A of the IRS regs, which is deferred compensation regulation. It's considered deferred compensation. So when it pays out, an employee, if they have phantom shares, it's going to be as taxable income to them as opposed to long-term capital gain.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on the other side of that coin, they also didn't have to pay a dime for any of those shares. They didn't ever have to dig in their pocket, bring money to the table, buy into the company. So, I mean, they avoided the front end financial commitment. The trade-off is it does get taxed as personal income to them when it pays out.
So if a business owner was considering phantom stock versus, general equity shares, what are a couple things? We probably touched on that a little bit, but what are a couple things that might sway them one way or another? In your experience?
Sure. I would say, I think, Chris, the biggest decision that somebody needs to make is around control and around voting rights. So do you want to have others in your company have a say with shares, real shares, general equity ownership shares or not? And that's number one. Number two is, what kind of flexibilities do you want to have in terms of how shares are earned, how shares get paid out? Do you want the ability to claw back shares if somebody left or you had to let them go? So, I mean, it's really about control. What kind of control do you want? Are you willing to give up? And also, what kind of flexibilities do you want or not care about? I mean, those are the two biggest deciding factors that will usually help a business owner guide them down which path. I'm a big believer that you should explore both and explore the pros and cons of both. And there are, like most things in life, there are pros and cons either way. I think you just got to figure out what are the pros and cons and figure out, what path works best for you. Now, the good news is, and the encouragement I'd love to give is, either option, I think, addresses some of the core issues that an owner has. Number one, if they got key people and they want to time up the golden handcuff, like you mentioned earlier, it definitely helps create that, which is awesome. The other thing that it does is, for the person who receives shares, whether they're phantom or true equity share, I mean, they got some serious motivation and skin in the game now.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not just there trying to earn a good living and get a good paycheck. They're really truly building wealth and equity for their family and charities that are dear to them down the road and all of that. So it definitely changes some people's mindset, which is what the business owner wants. They want other people in their company to think and act like an owner.
Mm-hmm.
So the good news is, doesn't matter which option you go, you can get some of those benefits. The last cool thing I'd say about regardless of which option you choose is really important. It puts the current owner and the people they give shares to on the same side of the table. So you're in the boat, rowing the same way at the same time. You have a lot less of this friction of owners versus employees and who's looking out for whose interest. And it just helps put everybody on the same side of things, which is great.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, very good. Let me pivot now if I can. You've been a partner for many years, and you've been married with Mike Walters, USA Financial.
Yes.
And then, of course, you had some other children. Some other people started getting phantom stock and equity shares and all sorts of stuff along the way as it's developed. So can you give us some, I guess, tips on how to be a good partner, how to make sure that relationship is mutually beneficial? Because, you're two different people. And so how do you navigate that to make it work long term?
It's a great question. So the way our deal ended up shaking out, Chris, is I ended up in the end with 20% ownership and everything here at USA Financial. My partner, Mike, that you mentioned, he has 80%. I would say one of the primary reasons why our partnership has worked so well, and it's been almost 30 years now. I mean, again, we started as Phantom, we ended up with Real Equity. Two things. Even though we're 80-20 ownership structure, Mike treats me like we're 50-50.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think for a lot of business owners would be hard to do, but he does. Yet I never forget that it's 80-20. So there's that mutual respect.
It's mutual humility. Actually,
Yeah,
that's a good word for it, mutual humility.
Yeah. And I really think that's why it's worked so well for him and I, because it is like a marriage and it's a give and take. And so, yeah, he views me and treats me as equal, but yet when push comes to shove, I respect that he's the primary owner. And if we don't agree on a decision, which by the way, hardly ever happens, but if we didn't, I know I have to defer. It's, he's the primary owner. So it just works for us that way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very, very good. Well, you've let's talk about if it doesn't work out. Mm-hmm. Right. This has sort of been a negative podcast. We spend most of our time on, man, watch out for this, but it is a sticky wicket. It's when it's good, man, is it good? When it's bad, man, is it bad? And people can grow apart. Somebody can, develop personal issues that really affects the business as they bring it in with them. And I mean, all sorts of things. You are entwined, which is, again, could be great or not as so good. So let's say that somebody's an equity partner and this is not working out and they're a minority holder position. How would Mike go about firing you? How does that work?
Yeah. So one of the things that everybody always has to remember in these type of relationships is like, I'll use Mike and I as an example. We have jobs. He's the CEO of the company. I'm the president of the company. And then he and I are owners. And it's really two different hats we wear. At the ownership level, we're 80-20, as I mentioned. In terms of a job, I mean, he could fire me. I could end up not working here and not being president, and he could fire me. Yet he still has to deal with me on the equity ownership side of things. So you can separate sometimes as working together, but it's pretty hard to separate ownership if you have true equity partnership. So just remember, you got two different hats you're all wearing and two different things can transpire. So the most important thing, in my opinion, to deal with this in advance of a problem, I kind of equate it to, it's not a good time to ask your wife to sign a prenup when you're married and you're already in a fight. It's too late.
Mm-hmm.
Level heads are not there. There's hurt feelings. People are mad. People are upset. You're going to have a hard time walking your way through separation if you haven't clearly defined in advance in writing, if we have to separate, how it's going to work. So it's a little awkward to have to do it on the front end, but that's when people are excited. The communication's good. You're like in the honeymoon, like everybody is oh yeah, this one, let's get this figured out now. It'll never happen to us, but get it written down. So it literally needs to be in your partnership agreements.
Oh, for sure.
It's to, hey, if things don't work out, first of all, I think if you can, and it's a little bit of a gray area, try to define some ways in which you can agree that if these certain things happen, one or both of us have the right to end this partnership. It's simple stuff. Like if there's, a legal thing that comes up and one partner is, accused of or convicted of a crime. I mean, you can define certain things,
Mm-hmm.
but if you just have a different philosophy about the direction of the business, it's hard to define that in writing, but try to define some ways in which you might need to break up. But more importantly, regardless of why a breakup might occur, try to get a definition of how it will work so that you're not squabbling over it. So for instance, in our operating agreements, it would state, Mike can get rid of me as an employee. I have equity ownership, but if we separate, whether he wants to or I want to, it is defined how it goes, how he buys me out, the length of the buyout. I mean, you try to get as much of that dealt with on the front end. So if it has to happen, you're not squabbling over how we're going to do it. It's already been defined how it's going to happen. But most people just assume it will never happen, and so they don't plan for that. Chris, we have a line here. I'm sure you've heard me or Mike say, hope for the best, plan for the worst.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to get some of this figured out, why things are fine and everybody's happy and getting along, because trying to do it if people aren't getting along is pretty hard.
So as the business matured and developed, and as, say, you and Mike, developed personally with dreams and aspirations and how you can contribute to the firm and those sorts of things, how often had you need to go back to that original agreement and tweak it?
Yeah, good question. Hardly ever. What we do periodically review, and we still do, is how we get paid, how we agree to pay each other as employees of the company. Because like I said, we're 80-20 from an ownership perspective. Mike treats me more like we're 50-50. If you looked at our compensation and how we pay each other, it's pretty close to 50-50. It's almost like a 60-40. So with him getting 60%, I'm getting 40. So we kind of review that periodically as to how we're paying ourselves and if we feel comfortable and agree with how we should get paid. And we definitely have periodically reviewed and massaged that over time.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, as employees, we don't have to pay ourselves the same ratio as we do as owners.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if we take dividends out at the end of the year of net profits, well, then that has to come out according to our ownership splits. But we massage around how we're paying each other to make sure we're both comfortable and feel that it's fair.
Yeah, very good stuff here. Very good stuff here. Well, what else do you have for us, Brent?
Chris, you mentioned something a minute ago. It just popped in my head. When you get into these relationships, and I talked about try to get some of these things written in agreements in advance. I think it's important that you get other things written in the agreement, like part of a buy-sell agreement. I mean, life happens. What happens if one of the owners or partners, whether it's the majority or the minority, were to pass away? How are you going to deal with that? Again, it's not a good time to be trying to figure that out after it's happened. So, make sure you're getting good tax and legal advice, and teams like yours can help coach people through that with your networking of experts. So it's important. Get that figured out. I think there should be things in agreements like rights of first refusal. If one partner wants out, can they go solicit an offer to get out? And do they have to give the other owner an opportunity, a crack at buying them first? I mean, it's best to get all that stuff worked out in advance. So if something happens, something wants to exit, or there's an ugly breakup, there's a death or disability, like how are you going to deal with all those what ifs?
Yeah, and what is the business valuation? How do we determine that? What are the terms? All that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, nobody wants to be doing that when something difficult or ugly is happening and then trying to get all parties to agree, especially if one party is no longer there, because now you're sometimes entangled with somebody's spouse. Now you're now in business with the spouse, or you're in business with their estate and the trustee of their estate. So it's better to get all that as best you can figured out in advance. And you as an advisor and the team you work with, estate planning attorneys, CPAs, I mean, good advice. And it takes a team. As they say, it takes a village to figure this out. Because it's complicated, and business owners spend their whole lives building this thing. It's like a China egg, and the last thing you want to do is drop it near the end and have it break apart. So it's best to get help and get it figured out as much you can in advance.
Yeah, navigating abundance is all about balancing your ledger wealth with your logistical wealth and your legacy wealth. The logistical wealth here, the teams of people, the professional synergies you developed, the documents you've created, which we've been talking about for business or even for estate planning. Boy, you need A+ people on your team, and it's going to cost money. And boy, is it worth it.
It's totally worth
it's a
it.
very valuable part of your wealth is your logistical team. So
Right.
that's so much.
Chris, I'll give you one quick example.
Yeah.
You know, Mike and I went through a transition a year ago where we sold the majority interest of our firm to another group. One of the outside professionals that helped us with that, there was one word in our agreement with the acquirer that significantly changed how Mike and I were going to be taxed on that. We didn't know that. We wouldn't have got one word in a 185-page agreement saved Mike and I a lot of taxes. So, don't try to go this alone. You need experts to help you. And sometimes, it's the little things. We joke, little hinges swing big doors. Sometimes it's the little stuff that makes more difference than the big obvious items.
Are you able to share what that one word is? I'm not going to be able to sleep at night. If you need to do it privately, I'll call you. That's okay.
Chris, I can't recall the exact wording,
okay,
but it was how we were gonna have to pay tax. It was traditional method versus maybe remedial method. So any CPAs or tax attorneys listening, you probably know what I'm talking about.
Right.
It was the one word, traditional versus remedial or something like that. And we were stunned. We're like, we had no idea.
Wow.
But you don't know what
you don't know. What you don't know. Yep.
Don't try to go it alone.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and it's wise to learn from other people's mistakes, for sure. So you want to do that. You don't want to be the guinea pig or the canary down the mine shaft. Any situation that you're facing as a business or in partnership has been done thousands of times before. So that's a great body of evidence then to use to lessen the pain or increase the opportunity as you go through whatever is on your right in front of you. So that's very good. Very good. All right. Well, Brent, do you have any closing words of wisdom for us here? I think this has been really great. We're just scratching the surface on this, of course. But as we come in for a landing here, anything that you can think of that might pop at the top of your head here that we might not have discussed or that you'd like to get out there to the audience?
Sure. Yeah. Chris, I would say just more of encouragement. I heard somebody say once, if you're going to get in the bathtub, the water doesn't get any warmer. So if you're thinking about doing this, start doing some research on it and learn what the options are and make sure you know why you want to do it. If you're going to look at it, make sure you believe in it because you could have somebody tell you it's a great idea, but you actually have to believe it. And then you've got to be committed to it. So the encouragement is get started. The sooner you check it out, research it, figure out if it works for you, the better off you're going to be. And then from there, it's just getting help implementing.
Yeah, very good. Well, Brent, thank you for your time. Thank you for your wisdom. Thanks for your encouragement. I think that any business owner listening to this should be motivated to make progress wherever they are in the stage of their partnership agreements. It's been really great, and thank you for your vulnerability with us today. I really, truly appreciate it, Brent.
Fun stuff. You and I both like doing these kind of things just to help people, so it's been fun. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely right. All right. Well, thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of Navigating Abundance. If you found this information useful or helpful in any way, let us know in the comments section below. If you'd like to see more content like this and follow our podcast, you can find us on all major podcast platforms. If you're interested in working with today's guests, you can find their information in the description of this podcast. If you'd like to know more about Navigating Abundance and how we may help you or find more resources related to what we do, you can find those at navigatingabundance.com.